All right. Thank you very much for your patience, folks. We had some technical issues there. If you are watching this on YouTube from home, the reason we've had a pause is because we've had some technical issues with the cameras. It looks like the cameras can pick up councillors, but not the top table, including myself. So you won't be able to see me, but hopefully you can hear me. Oh, it might be working. Oh, okay. Okay, well, welcome. Anyway, so where we were looking at declarations of interest. We've just heard from Councillor Amos, I think Councillor Murray. Thank you very much. Any other declarations of interest? I see no further ones. So move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Can we agree that the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of May 2025 are a true and accurate record? I see nods, so I think that is taken that these are an accurate and true record. And any matters arising? No, I don't see any indication. So I will sign those off as a true record of the meeting that took place on the 13th of May. The next item are Mayor's communications, and just like to give you an update on what I've been up to since our last meeting. So it's been a busy couple of months since I was elected mayor, and I've worked out that I've attended almost 60 different mayoral related events and activities in that time. Being mayor is a great honour. It really, really is. It's very exciting. It's very, very busy. It's very, very interesting, but also it is extremely humbling. Learning is my theme for the year, and it's been a delight to have visited a variety of schools and colleges, including Carnforth School, King's, Bowbrook School, New College, and the place where I started my career in education, Howe College, back when it was Worcester College of Technology. And emphasising that learning is not just for the young, it was a real delight to attend the 40th anniversary of the U3A last Friday. I'm particularly enjoying doing the tours of the Guildhall. It's one of my favourite bits of the job. And in doing my homework, I found out all kinds of interesting historical facts that I was unaware of. And, you know, I really do believe passionately that this building is a real treasure trove. And within it, you can find the story both of our city and of our nation. And we must be careful to preserve it. I've hosted visiting groups from France, from Germany, from Pakistan, as well as local students from New College, Worcester Sixth Form College and Hereford Sixth Form College. And the Mayoress and I also welcomed a delightful couple, Monica and Michael, who were celebrating their 60th wedding anniversary, and they enjoyed tea in the Mayor's Parlour. I'm also very keen to develop and encourage the cultural offer of our city. So it was wonderful to open the Alchemy of Words Literature Festival, coordinated by Lena at Script Haven. And at that event, we chose the new Worcestershire literary champion, Pete Thompson, who will be encouraging reading, literature and poetry across the county. It was also great to open the first ever Worcester Stuart History Festival at the Old Palace last Saturday. And I'm hoping that this will become an annual event which helps recognise and celebrate Worcester's central role in the revolutionary upheaval of the 17th century. One of the things that has struck me in the last 2 months is the massive contribution that volunteers make to the life of our city. All across Worcester, there are groups and individuals raising money, providing vital services and enriching Worcester for little or no reward or recognition. And that is why the volunteer celebration that we held here at the Guildhall last month was so important. And I will be inviting some of the volunteers I've met to the Mayor's inaugural banquet in recognition of their contribution. It has also been a great honour to celebrate the diversity of our city. Worcester is a city that has welcomed a host of different people over the decades and has made them welcome. In return, from across the globe, people have made Worcester their home and have contributed to the life of our city. Therefore, it was wonderful to open Euro Worcester, which celebrated the contribution that Worcester's European community has made to the city, whether they are Poles, Italians, Bulgarians or Ukrainians. I really believe our city is enriched by their presence. I was also proud to attend an exhibition to mark Refugee Week at the Hive, which highlighted the generosity of Worcester in welcoming those fleeing war and persecution. I marked the contribution made by Worcester's Afro-Caribbean community with the raising of the Windrush flag and a wonderful art exhibition at the Guildhall, which featured thought-provoking works inspired by the experience of the Windrush generation. Finally, I'm determined that we should never forget the contribution made by our armed forces to our city, our country and our nation. I attended a ceremony marking the glorious 1st of June battle during the Napoleonic Wars at Gallivelt Park, and the park was also the location of the start of the Gallivelt to Gallivelt Cycle Challenge, which both commemorated the pivotal battle in World War I and raised money for local charities. I spoke at the raising of the Armed Forces flag here at the Guildhall, and on Sunday, the Mayoress and I were delighted to travel to Critch in Derbyshire to attend the Critch pilgrimage and to lay a wreath at the Critch Memorial. This is an annual gathering of the Mercian Regiment, the successor to the Worcestershire Regiment, and it is held to pay respect to fallen comrades and remember the service given by soldiers, including those from Worcester. It was a very, very moving ceremony. And a couple of dates for councillors to put in their diaries. You've got a flyer, I think, in front of you. So on Saturday, the 20th of September, we have the Mayor's Charity Concert at 2 p.m. here at the Guildhall. This is in aid of Acorns, which is my charity of the year and features the wonderful Voices Unlimited. And tickets are £12.50, and there's a flyer on your desk, and tickets are available via the QR code or via Eventbrite. And on Friday, the 26th of September, we have the Mayor's inaugural banquet, which will also be held at the Guildhall, and invites will go out to councillors at the end of July. And finally, we are very sad to learn that John Wrightson, who some of you may remember, the council's former head of urban development, has passed away. And I would like to invite Councillor Gregson to say a few words about him.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, it is a very sad news. I think John's demise was quite unexpected, but I don't imagine that many in the room will remember John's contribution. He was a very amiable, meticulous and detailed officer who joined us in 2007 and left at the end of 2010. He came to us from the Heart of England Tourist Board, where he'd spent some considerable time, and so was very well versed in the visitor and the heritage side of what was important in our city. And although he worked in Hampshire and Chesterfield, he remained living in the city, so by the time we appointed him, he knew the city very well. He was what they call the chief planner, head of environment, housing, planning, conservation. He was oversaw the development of the Premier Inn at New Road, cricket ground. Was also very involved with the flood barriers, which the earth flood barriers, which were promoted in Diglis following the once in a 50-year time flood in 2007. I'm not sure how many more once in 50-year floods we've had since then, but that's not down to John. In his retirement, he continued to work with local people. He worked with U3A, was a volunteer leader at U3A, particularly on a steering group in history, and also supporting his wife Marilyn, who was very active in the Hardy Plant Society, including exhibiting at the Worcester Show. So a sad loss to the city, I feel, but thank you for the opportunity to say something about him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. And the final thing to say under Mayor's communication is at the close of the meeting, there will be refreshments in the Mayor's parlour. So please, if you'd like a piece of cake, please come and join us. The next item on the agenda is public participation, and we have two members of the public who have registered to speak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite each speaker to come forward and address the council. I'm just going to remind the speakers that they have 5 minutes, so please, if you can sort of stick to the allocated time. And just as a reminder, can I ask members not to interrupt speakers during their allotted time, please? So the first speaker is Melissa. So if you'd like to come up to the public speaking desk.
In April, I stood outside this building and spoke against the Supreme Court verdicts that have shaken many lives in this city. I've spoken about how petrified and how angry I am. The place that I used to go to, I no longer feel safe going to. People who are supposed to be making laws are not thinking about the consequences. They feel that stripping human rights for trans people will protect women and girls from harm. They believe that men are dressing up in dresses to attack women in the toilets and in changing rooms. Men do dress up to attack women. They dress up as teachers, policemen, security guards, doctors, coaches, politicians. They even dress up as presidents. Men are not going to be put off by a sign on the door. To be honest, they don't even need a door. I was sexually assaulted by a delivery driver who wasn't delivering to my house. That's how I know that they don't need a toilet to attack women. Let me talk facts. According to Rape Crisis, 3 women a week are killed by cisgendered men. Trans people are more than likely to be victims of sexual violence than perpetrators. And 10 people who work for West Mercia Police have been suspended for inappropriate behaviour in the workplace. The Supreme Court ruling has changed a lot for cisgendered women too. I know a lot of women who are cis and who have been harassed out of toilets and changing rooms just because they don't look what the patriarchal definition of what a woman should look like. My daughter's mum was having a meal with her son in a restaurant when she was misgendered. She has always looked a certain way, and now this ruling has emboldened people to misgender people and bully them. Over the last couple of months, elected members of this council have been absolutely quiet. Your quietness speaks volumes. This chamber is complicit in the removal of human rights for trans people and cisgendered people. Not one person from this council has stood up against this ruling. Following the Supreme Court ruling, trans people and anyone who doesn't fit the patriarchal definition of what a woman is are no longer safe to use women's spaces. What is the City Council doing to support people who can no longer use toilets, leisure facilities, fitness centres and any other City Council owned facility in the wake of this change? Thank you.
Thank you very much. A written reply will be provided for you. The next question, or the next public participation, is from Francis Lancaster. So if you'd like to...
If you don't mind, Mayor, I would prefer to stand.
You need to be by the mic so it's picked up for the video.
I would have preferred to have stood there, understandably, to face everyone. I did know John Wrights, and so I thank Councillor Gregson for the remarks, and I would like to be associated. Why is he here again? After the last council meeting, I was in a synagogue in London, and some of our Jewish fellow citizens begged myself and others to stand in solidarity with them against the rising tide of anti-Semitism and identity politics in this country. We should always try to apply equal scales, because otherwise we may be acting according to prejudice, even if we don't realize it. And you know that I find disturbing the obsession with Israel and the Jews. There are many people suffering around this world. 200,000 children have credibly died from malnutrition in Yemen. 100,000 people were deliberately starved to death by the Ethiopian government to suppress the Tigrayan rebellion. Millions have died in Congo. Thousands have been massacred in Sudan and Nigeria. But a council resolution, there have been 40 around the country, which legitimizes the marches, which I'm sorry, I must describe them as hate marches. They are putting our fellow citizens in fear, and they want them to stop. The resolution which this council passed in November 2023 was based on a model motion. The first phrase reads, "Council deeply regrets and condemns the tragic loss of civilian life in both the Hamas terrorist attacks on 7th October and the ensuing Israeli bombardment of Gaza." It doesn't just say that, of course. There's a lot missing there. Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organization. It is the Palestinian wing of Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood, a clerical fascist death cult. And the Hamas attacks were the worst pogrom since the Holocaust. What does it mean that those facts are missing? Well, everyone knows there's a golden rule of anti-racism, anti-fascism. Once we identify fascism, we are obliged to fight against it, surely. So the rest of the motion could not have proceeded because it should have been about condemning utterly the worst pogrom and the murder of 15 of our citizens. Dual citizens, yes, but British citizens. And the kidnapping of 2, one of whom, originally born in Wakefield, was murdered by Hamas in captivity. The model motion, I think, was probably copied a lot from Sheffield, but there's one significant difference. Sheffield motion, whether I agree with it or not, demanded the release of the kidnapped hostages, and this was not in the Worcester resolution. Since the Worcester resolution appears to have been based on the Sheffield one, that omission must have been deliberate, and it's inhumane anyway. Worcester Labour Party did the decent thing and tried to include that, and I commend them for it. I mean, I shouldn't have to, should I, when people do the basic decent thing, but there's so much moral cowardice and inversion around this issue that I must commend them for doing that. The supporters of the original resolution doubled down. They wouldn't accept that. Now, what they were saying on behalf of all 105,000 people in our city was that this city condones kidnapping, which I think is a disgrace. So, and the accusation of genocide, please. This is the Parliamentary Commission report. It's a grim narrative, it's of barbarism and savagery, but also of self-sacrifice and love. Please, I appeal to you to read it. So in conclusion, I issue this challenge. The Gaza resolution passed by the Council is a moral stain on the reputation of our city and causes division and anxiety. I issue this challenge. Is there one elected member who has the moral sense and the moral courage to introduce a resolution to expunge it from the record? Or if that is not possible according to standing orders, to apologise for it? Is there even one? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Francis, and you will receive a written reply to your public participation. Okay, we next move on to questions, and we are now going to consider questions which have been submitted in accordance with Council Procedure 9. The questions have been circulated, and those should be in front of you. So we move to question number 1, which is from Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question is to Councillor Denham, Leader of the Council. 2025 marks a centenary of the founding of the Fields in Trust charity in 1925, then called the National Playing Fields Association. Over the last 100 years, they have played an important role in protecting our cherished parks, playing fields and other green spaces that are of vital importance to communities across the country, including this county. There is no such space that is more loved than the green in Lower Wick and Pitmarston ward. Given the dwindling amount of green open space now available for a rapidly growing city population, it is vital that we protect and preserve what we have. So would the leader liaise with the city's legal services team to begin the process to obtain field in trust status to protect the green in Lower Wick?
Thank Councillor Amos for his question. I think a number of us might take issue with that there is no space that is more loved than the green in Lower Wick. I think we all have very much loved spaces in different parts of the city. It would be invidious for me to say my favourite, but I guess a number of colleagues will be aware. The council is familiar with Fields in Trust charity, and this gives me an opportunity to absolutely celebrate all that they have achieved in their 100 years of existence. And in fact, the council has successfully applied for 8 of its public open spaces to be designated Fields in Trust. This includes Offerton Lane Local Nature Reserve, Diglis Fields, St Peter's Power Park, Northwick Lido, Oldbury Road Playing Fields, Warndon Park and Cromwell Crescent. If you've been counting, that's 7 locations. And I fear Councillor Amos didn't do all of his homework, because the 8th location with this status is the green off Weyburn Close. That was designated Fields in Trust on the 15th of February 2013 in celebration of the then Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee celebrations. I guess I can slightly forgive him in that the actual legal title of that piece of land following its Field in Trust designation is Queen Elizabeth II Field, Weyburn Close.
Thank you very much. And does Councillor Amos have a supplementary question?
Well, it's a hurrah, Mr. Mayor. I'm, like all intelligent people, I'm always willing to learn. And what I've learned tonight is really good news. But would she please just ensure that legally we are talking about one and the same? I know in fact we are, but I wouldn't want there to be any future discrepancy between the green, which is what it's known as, and the other description that it has been given, which isn't really used. I would be most grateful if you could just tie that loose end. I will give her almost 10 out of 10.
I'll do my best to claim full marks. This is the information from officers in discussion with, legal team. I mean, it won't be the first time that, lay people, local people have a different name for a location or an area to what actually is the strict legal status. And I think it's also kind of worth emphasising that within Fields in Trust, the fact that it was previously the National Playing Fields Association is that, play areas and so on are incorporated, are allowed within the designation. And it means that land can't be disposed of, can't be built on, without the consent of the National Playing Fields Association.
Thank you very much. And the second question is also from Councillor Amos to Councillor Denham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick progress on this one. I suspect possibly not, but there we are. So the second question is again to Councillor Denham. Some time ago, this council agreed to cooperate with the Home Office on its programme of dispersing illegal immigrant / asylum seekers to Worcester, as this would in return enable the council to control which areas they were sent to. However, it appears the Home Office has now reneged on this deal, as they have included a property in Pitmarston Road in the Lower Wick and Pitmarston ward, which had been agreed was not on the list of suitable locations. Since then, the Home Office have refused to engage both with council officers and Worcester's local press. In these circumstances, will she now end all cooperation with the Home Office on this matter with immediate effect?
Thank you for the question. It's a permutation of others that you've asked in the past. There is, I'm afraid, elements of misinformation within your question. The most important, it is the last government which commissioned Serco to manage dispersal programme for asylum seekers, and Serco have received huge amounts of money to do so. And I note that's the government that the councillor was previously very much in support of. It may be that the lack of you said that Home Office has refused to engage with both council officers and Worcester's local press. I don't think that is accurate, and it maybe does depend on the question that is being asked and the risks and inaccuracies of what is being asked. So Serco have recommenced a postcode check process, which is possibly what he's referring to. This does enable local councils the opportunity to feed back on properties of interest that Serco are looking to procure with regard to suitability, taking account of many different factors, and consultation involves ward councillors, West Mercia Police, private sector housing, the Integrated Care Board and Public Health to look at a range of factors about suitability.
Okay. And is there a supplementary question, Councillor Amos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank Councillor Denham for her question, and she's quite right. It is a permutation on previous questions that I've raised, because I can't ever seem to get any answers. So the questions, I'm afraid, will go on. I fully accept her comments and agree with her comments about the culpability of the previous Tory government, which on this issue is as useless as this one. I know of no changes to the Home Office's official policy on this matter. When I last spoke to the relevant officer about it, nor did he. So I'd be interested to know what the change of policy is. And as a ward councillor, I've had no involvement in anything to do with this. I can't get any answers. This is why I have to raise questions here. So could I please ask Councillor Denham, in all sincerity and genuineness, will she stand up for the people of Worcester to address this issue? Because this issue is now become very widespread, and it is causing growing anger and frustration in the city. And we cannot go on like this with cover-ups, dishonesty and attempts to criminalise discussion on this issue. So can she please do what she can so that the people of Worcester, councillors in particular, simply know what is going on in their own wards, openly, honestly and with transparency?
It may be that you don't have information because there are no properties that have been identified as possible within your ward. There are very real risks to vulnerable people if properties where they do live are made public, and with the level of hatred and discourse and social media attacks and the riots of last year, we've seen attacks on hotels where asylum seekers have been placed. It is inappropriate to put that information in the public domain.
Thank you. And question number 3 is from Councillor Murray to Councillor Denham.
Thank you. Given the current financial support for some of our community centres, including those delivering vital services in our city, has been shifted from core revenue funding to UK shared prosperity funding, which is a time-limited fund, can the leader advise what consideration will be given over to ensure sustainable long-term funding for these essential assets once UK SPF ends? And will relevant committees be asked to examine future options, recognising the role of that such centres play as the beating hearts of our communities?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. Community centres do play a very important role within our communities. And I'm pleased that this council was able to make a contribution towards that during the current financial year. We don't know for certain whether UK SPF will be continuing. We don't yet know what funding local government will have for the next financial year. I was lucky enough to go to the Local Government Association conference last year, and the government are looking at fairer funding for local councils, and that funding would take account of levels of deprivation, population size, I think council tax base, and also levels of kind of visitor economy. So the current government are consulting on a significant shift in how local councils are funded, and are wanting, rather than have lots of different separate funding streams, actually, which people have to compete for, looking to bring those together. The intention is of a multi-year settlement for local government towards the end of November. We will obviously look at that, and we will do our best to use our funds to benefit our communities as best we can.
Thank you. And is there a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Thank you. Can you also give this council the assurance that in any discussions or negotiations around local government reorganisation, the vital role and value of these grants and the continuity of the centres they support will be clearly and firmly advocated for?
Absolutely. I mean, in the sense of, those community centres are really important, all of them. And I think, the government, there's recent announcements about the value of community hubs. I mean, I haven't got the figures, but, investment in those, and those of us that remember Sure Start and how wonderful Sure Start was, family hubs is, an alternative, the newer version, and our community centres are well cited to potentially take on those functions. There are no guarantees at this point in time as to what a new unitary council may or may not do, but I think we on this council are very passionate about our local communities.
Thank you. And question number 4 is from Councillor Jagger to Councillor Lewin, Chair of Planning.
Thank you, Mayor. Worcester consistently delivers strong outcomes in planning, with decisions made on time and a lean team of achieving a great deal. Whilst attending the LGA conference, I sat down with a representative from Grant Thornton who demonstrated a benchmarking platform that claims to use publicly available government data to generate comparisons between councils in seconds. Anyone with access to this tool, whether in government, media, or another local authority, can form a snap judgment about how Worcester compares. One of the outputs showed that our spend on development control appears higher than in similar councils. I'm aware that efforts have been already made to deliver efficiencies in this area, and I don't believe there is any waste. But given that what I saw at the conference, including examples of councils using bespoke language models to assist with time-consuming admin, such as summarizing objections or drafting conditions, I'd like to ask whether the chair and the team would be open to a conversation about how technology could support the excellent work that is already being done.
Thank you, Councillor Jagger, for your question, and also for, in your question, recognising the excellent performance of our planners. There is going to be the annual report coming out soon, and there'll be details of how we are a consistently strong and a team that we should be really proud of. Our planning services is very lean, as you said, and in terms of size of the staffing establishment, but also very effective and, established leadership. There is a plethora of information on the public domain about local government finance, but the way this information is sometimes difficult to interpret because it's presented in different ways. And at first glance, a spend on a particular service may be higher between similar councils, but actually they're not the same. So some caution is required because benchmarking comparisons are not exactly alike. And one of the things I would say about Worcester is we have a number of conservation areas. We have a very high number of listed buildings. So, it does make us different to many other places. But the planning service has embraced change, particularly over the last 3 years, both culturally and through technology and innovation. And officers are committed to continuous improvement. And this includes tracking changes and opportunities to increase the use of technology, but without undermining the customer service standards that the planning service has rightly received plaudits for under the current management. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there a supplementary question from Councillor Jagger?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Is the chair aware of the government's £5,000 digital planning and improvement fund, which supports councils to modernise planning systems using tools like AI and automation? Given our strong performance and high spend, would the chair commit to looking into this and exploring an application before the first deadline on the 29th of July?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jagger. That's the question 5. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I am aware of the Digital Information Improvement Fund, and the Head of Planning and Economic Development has confirmed that they're looking into this. Obviously, we work with South Worcestershire neighbours with a view of submitting an application together before the deadline, because it makes sense through our partnership working arrangements and our shared ICT service with and also our South Worcestershire Development Plan that we collaborate when submitting the funding application. The Council signed the Local Digital Declaration in December 2018, and when you look at the Digital Planning Improvement Fund, there are some success stories from other councils where they have made progress in harnessing, improved data and digital solutions. But we're all aware that IA is happening at great speed, and whether we like it or not, we have to be careful and aware that computer systems, although capable of performing tasks that traditionally require human intelligence, such as learning from data, recognising patterns and making informed decisions, AI also presents significant opportunities in terms of research, but we also hear a lot about AI with errors, mistakes and failures. So we need to approach AI in planning with some caution, but also recognise that there are benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm mindful that we've moved on to question 5 there. Have you got a supplementary question to question 5?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is notices of motion. And we've had a number of notices of motion submitted tonight. Now, the first one, which is motion 1, Standing United Against Abuse and Intimidation, that motion has been withdrawn. Okay, so we'll move on from that one. Which brings us on to the second motion, Prevent the Licence to Kill Worcester's Nature. And this is proposed by Councillor Lewin and seconded by Councillor Cross. So I'll invite Councillor Lewin to propose this motion.
Thank you, Chair. I speak today to propose this motion, which calls on us to express our serious concerns about the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, a bill that risks doing long-term harm to nature both here in Worcester and across the country. But I am going to make a slight change to the motion. This is in the first action where I put that the leader will take action, and actually I think it's more appropriate that we ask the managing director to take action, which is more usual in our motions. So there'll be that amendment. Nature and wildlife charities see this bill in its current form as a major threat to the natural world. The Wildlife Trust describe it as a licence to destroy, The RSPB says it will rip the heart out of environmental protections and risks sending nature further into freefall. Even the government's own Office for Environmental Protection has called the bill environmentally regressive and a backward step in environmental protection that directly conflicts with Section 20 of the Environment Act in 2021. This isn't just a technical concern, it's a rollback that would have real consequences for local wildlife. And, you know, why is this important? And I'm going to quote Tony Juniper, who's the CBE chair of Natural England in the State of Natural Capital Report of England last year, in 2024 in fact. He said, "Nature has historically been regarded as largely expendable in the pursuit of economic advances, but there is a growing understanding that we can no longer afford to treat it in such a careless way. Our economy and our society depend on complex ecosystems from mountaintops to seabeds for food, clean water and air, our ability to cope with climate change impacts and places that foster health and well-being. We all know, however, that we have a fragmented landscape which creates major barriers for all wildlife. Species like hedgehogs, butterflies, bees, otters, waterfowl and key bird populations are already in trouble. Gains that many organisations have worked hard to achieve could be reversed if planning is allowed to proceed without robust ecological assessment. So I'm focusing on part 3 of the bill because this is of particular concern, because it removes 2 crucial pillars of environmental protection. One is the precautionary principle and one is the mitigation hierarchy, in exchange for a weak future promise that Natural England would deliver overall improvement to nature to compensate for damage done by destructive developments. There would be no legal obligation or guarantee that any such improvements would actually be delivered. It weakens the requirement for developers to consider biodiversity impacts during the planning process. In essence, this hands over unprecedented powers to override local environmental decision-making, power that lacks the necessary scrutiny and checks that will remove existing duties that local authorities use to challenge inappropriate development. And instead of strengthening local voices, the bill risks centralising decisions and reducing the capacity for local nature to be considered meaningfully in planning. Proponents of the bill argue that a new nature restoration duty and environmental delivery plan will compensate for these changes. But as pointed out by the Wildlife Trust, these proposals are currently vague, unenforceable and uncosted. Here in Worcester, we have made local commitments to nature recovery and working on a biodiversity strategy which aims to support pollinators, protect and improve our water quality and create green corridors. But these efforts depend on a planning system that also supports biodiversity and does not bypass it. And I want to be really clear, I am not opposed to new housing and new infrastructure. We need new housing, we need new social housing, but it is about ensuring that progress does not come at the expense of habitats, species and the wider ecological health that we all depend on. And as it stands, this bill undermines the very foundations of nature protection. So I urge you to support this motion, as nature needs legally enforceable protections, not vague promises. We cannot afford to treat the environment as a bureaucratic obstacle. It is a shared inheritance and we have a duty to defend it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I understand this has been seconded by Councillor Cross.
Correct, Mayor, and may I reserve my right to speak later?
Thank you very much. So are there any other speakers? I have Councillor Scott, Lawrence, Udall. Yes. Okay, I seem to have Councillor Scott, Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Udall. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am very concerned about this motion for a number of reasons. First of all, its title, A Licence to Kill Worcester's Nature. That seems to me ridiculously hyperbolic and sensational. Councillor Lewin gives no detailed explanation as to how the nature of our local biodiversity will be affected. She mentions a couple of species, and some vague mention of corridors. My understanding is that most of the specially environmentally sensitive areas of the city are immune from development because of public ownership, special protection, or they are in flood zones. We aren't about to see bulldozer through Nunnery Wood, development of Chapter Meadows, or the clearance of the Lawn Brook Nature Reserve. The government is determined to change the present system of biodiversity net gain and the other systems which she accurately described. Basically deals with a case-by-case, site-by-site, lengthy appraisal of each proposal. The present system is seen as very slow. It opens up the door to NIMBYism, blocking the crucial development that the country requires for economic growth and the new housing that the country so badly needs. It does not provide strategic solutions to wildlife improvement. It is totally reactive. The new system of contributing to a nature restoration fund, environmental delivery plans drawn up by Natural England, it is claimed by the government will bring about significant improvements in the investment in wildlife, a win-win government is aiming for. Concern has been expressed by many individuals and bodies with an interest in nature. Councillor Lewin mentioned a couple of those. They seem to be concerned about the details in the bill and how it will be implemented, as well as its overall principles. Parliament, especially at committee stage, has been giving them due consideration because of their particular interest, and we wait to see how the final details are presented and how the future systems will work. That's about the implementation stage, once the Act is passed. Apart from making a showboating statement, there's no value to be added by the City Council entering the consultation process at this late stage. It's already well through its parliamentary process. I bow to Councillor Lewing's detailed understanding of the issues, but I must say that her reference to the Town and Country Planning Act in paragraph 2 is completely misleading. She quotes from the opening section of their comments to the Houses of Lords on the Planning Infrastructure Bill in June 2025. That's their opening paragraph she quotes, but then they do not go on to mention section 3 or wildlife provision in the slightest, dealing with other issues which aren't relevant here. The reference to the Office for Environment Protection and the Environment Act of 2021 seems to me a bit odd, and I think the warning she quotes in paragraph 4 is part of their standard operational duty, advising government when they might be contravening the Environment Act. The office is, of course, a government agency. If the bill is passed, no doubt that specific clause could be amended in statute if it was an obstacle. Okay. She fails to mention the many other measures in the bill, especially the reinforcing and modernisation of the planning system, its infrastructure plans, investment, and improvements in the badly failing housing market. Rather than this showboating motion, we should be using the time to highlight, I agree with her on this, the good work the City Council is doing to promote biodiversity. This is about the sites we own and manage and how we work with residents, communities and businesses, a leadership role, and our proactive work with developers. So I am against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Mayor. As a committed Green Liberal Democrat, one of the reasons I stood as a councillor was to protect wildlife and increase biodiversity. I believe that nature is at the heart of our communities. Yes, we need housing and building land, but not at the cost of further marginalising our beleaguered wildlife. We are seeing increasingly concerned extremes of weather, which is devastating infrastructure building, farmland and taking lives. I've just returned from a holiday in Paris where the wide, treeless, insectless streets cleared on Napoleon's orders were baking sun traps, and yet the tree-lined avenues with garden flats returned to nature by the city planners were several degrees cooler with clean air, busy economic hives of activity where humans chatted and children played. We must learn to put nature first before we do permanent harm to our biodiversity and our own health. We should not be weakening environment protection on planning, we should be strengthening it. We just can't shift nature every time it appears to get in our way. We should work with nature. You can't remove a hedge and simply stick a bird box on a building and tell a bird to go and live there. They need forage, shelter, bird nesting materials and a clean supply of water. We should thank nature and for the way it improves our mental health and well-being and the way it improves our air quality, reduces air temperature and provides food for us. Changes in the planning and infrastructure bill should seek to protect nature and enhance biodiversity. If we don't act now, we won't have any nature left. When we remove the protection of nature, we remove protection from our communities and future generations. And along with countless wildlife organisations and concerned citizens, I deplore what has been termed as a licence to kill nature. I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Udall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an amendment to the motion which I believe is available to be distributed. Do you want me to hold fire until it's circulated?
Those should be coming round. I think they're in front of you now. So would you like to speak to
Yeah,
your
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been a councillor in this chamber on and off for nearly 30.
Sorry, Councillor Udall. Yeah, Councillor
I've been
Cross.
Sorry, read it first, because I'm just comparing. I've achieved 2 paragraphs thus far. Thank you.
That's absolutely fine. Give you a couple of minutes to read it if that's helpful. Just to help councillors, it's the bit at red at the bottom which has changed.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Are we okay? Are we okay for Councillor? Yep, I see. Yep, Councillor Udall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I've been a councillor on and off for this council for nearly 35 years. And I've got some experience of lobbying government in various issues in various ways. So when we lobby government and ask for change in proposed legislation, or to support a new idea or a view, it's much better to say yes, but, rather than no, because. The bill which is currently going through its committee stage in Parliament is, in general, a good piece of legislation. It's a piece of long-needed legislation which will reform the planning process and enable economic and social growth and bring new opportunities. For too long, wildlife preservation has been used as an excuse for NIMBYism. People with no previous history of concern suddenly become fascinated with newts, frogs and slow worms. Unlike others, I've always had an interest in wildlife and its preservation, and perhaps I should declare my membership of a number of organisations like the Worcestershire Wildlife Trust, the RSPB, the Marine Conservation Society and Surfers Against Sewage. So my sympathy is with the movers of this motion. I have sympathy with the motion and wanted to support it, but its wording had an element of political posturing, something which we should be avoiding when trying to seek cross-party support. This amendment seeks support for a real change to the bill. It seeks future amendments to the bill rather than its abolition. It does this without going to the extreme request of calling for this section to be scrapped altogether, which is not in the long-term interest of future development and is likely to be ignored by government. Seeking amendments to the bill to see the change we want has a much more realistic chance of success than an outright request to oppose it. It's about packaging. It's about using wording to maximise the change you want to see. If you want to see change in government policy, you need to understand the government policy a little more and condemn them a little less. So this amendment is about change, it's about cooperation, it's about using our influence for the better to get the changes we want to see. This may go over the heads of some people, but we don't need to shout at the rain, we may need to dance in the rain. I move the amendment, Chair.
Do we have anyone who's formally seconding the amendment? Councillor Desira?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I second this amendment. I think it's a pragmatic approach.
Thank you very much. Do we have any speakers on the amendment, on the amended motion? I've got Councillor Kimberley. I've got Councillor Orcott. Anyone else want to speak on the amended motion? No? Okay, so Councillor Kimberley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a member of Planning Committee, I've seen repeatedly how biodiversity net gain is constantly referred to as a measure to judge all applications by, all well and good. I think it's something that we can all support. But the purview of biodiversity net gain sort of ends with the planning proposal that is being considered. It does not help us to restore nature on a larger scale as is needed. The restoration fund that is being proposed in the planning bill would achieve that outcome. I would find it impossible to vote for the motion as it is unamended, but with the amendment, I think it adds in the scope to consider reasonable improvements to the bill, and there are always reasonable improvements to be made to any bill. I think that it is a good idea as suggested in the amended version, and I would be much happier supporting that, so I would like to support the amendment, so I can vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Orcott?
Mayor, thank you. I certainly understand the logic of not writing to the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. I think the Prime Minister is engaged with other pressing international matters, and with the Deputy Prime Minister, I think she's on a mission to build, and so that will be little point. I value the comment about Tom Collins and bringing in a more local element, because we are a city council, but what does concern me is the way it says that the planning infrastructure bill may damage our efforts. I think it will damage our efforts. Thank you.
Okay, and I have Councillor Riaz.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think I just need to go back to some of the points made earlier in terms of actually what this bill actually seeks to achieve in Parliament, and just kind of highlight those. I mean, as the planning infrastructure bill is intended to accelerate housing and infrastructure delivery to meet national growth and housing targets. It also creates a national restoration fund and an environmental delivery plans that embed environmental considerations into development planning. And it also streamlines and simplifies planning frameworks which incorporate climate resilience and green growth goals. So all the objectives that, the threats that, nature will be a loss and a huge destruction are to a certain extent unfounded. The government's objective is to modernise the planning system in a way that integrates environmental priorities and not bypass them, and it enables cleaner, greener infrastructure faster. And from a national perspective, the bill actually does seek to balance growth with green protections and correct years of underinvestment and planning gridlock created under previous Conservative governments. So in terms of highlighting that, and the motion is here just doesn't, the original motion doesn't realise the full environmental benefits of what this bill brings. Hence, I'm unable to support the main motion and wish to support the second one. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Stephen.
I wish to speak against this amendment, largely because what a number of the people have said who have been proposing this amendment have been saying is that it's better to sort of centralise the biodiversity loss. So if you've got a particular site that has had, say for example, a 400-year-old veteran tree, or a piece of particular grassland or whatever, that the best way of mitigating that loss is to centralise it and put a fund of money in somewhere to then be able to have some other compensatory sort of compensation for that particular loss of that land. I fundamentally disagree with that, because the value of a 400-year-old veteran oak tree cannot be mitigated by planting 100 trees somewhere else. It cannot be done. And the same thing with particular certain pieces of really important grassland and other areas of land that we need. It is simply wrong to be able to say that you can mitigate that and put it somewhere else. And that is wrong inherently, but it's also wrong from a practical point of view as well, because in many cases we know that things get lost in transmission, things get lost in the bureaucracy, things get lost in the failure to do proper enforcement. We know how difficult it is to enforce things next week, next month, let alone years into the future. So it is really vital that we are allowed to make our own planning decisions on a local basis. The people who know an area should have a really big say in planning decisions. And this is basically riding coaching horses through local democracy and local people deciding things in planning committees. I think we're fed up with centralisation and central government basically telling us what to do. Thank you.
Okay, and I have Councillor Mace next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to support the motion as written this evening, so thank you to Councillor Lewing for bringing it. I am disturbed by the Planning and Investment Infrastructure Bill gets rid of the mitigation hierarchy, i.e. that first one should seek to avoid environmental damage, then you should minimise it, and only then should you offset it. And I know that MPs such as Labour MP Chris Hinchcliffe have spoken up in Parliament about the danger of prioritising offsetting over the prevention of damage to ecosystems. And I think one of the really big examples of how biodiversity net gain is helping and rather than offsetting is through the pitch that we installed in Purgeswell, where we secured a 40% biodiversity net gain through the installation of that. Wouldn't be acceptable while we were doing that work, which has an environmental cost, to then put environmental improvement somewhere far away from Purgeswell. You know, it has to be on site. And I take Councillor Holmes' point about being in Paris and having those tree-lined avenues. Again, it's not that we can cut down nature and build it somewhere else. We have to be integrating it into our cities where it's been built. And I think I take important context here is that government has the laudable goal of building 1.5 million homes to deal with our housing shortage, which is really important, and we do need that. However, we don't need to slash environmental protections to do that. The Institute of Public Policy Research has said that there's 1.4 million homes in this country where planning permission has been granted and they've not been built. And then we have to ask the question, why is that? Is it because developers are happy to sit on that land and have no incentive to actually build their homes because they know if they wait, they can build them later and make more profit? Just in my ward of St Stephen, approval was granted in 2022 to build 6 homes on the former site of a glove factory on Sunnyside Road. But here we are within touch and distance of that planning permission expiring. They're not being built. There are no homes being built on Sunnyside Road for residents in St Stephen. I'm also glad to see that this motion calls for Tom Collins to oppose this bill, not as the amendment calls for, to consider supporting any amendments, which you can consider support and then vote against it when you're told to. Because I've checked all of his contributions in Parliament, which doesn't take an especially long time, and he has not spoken once about the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, and I know that it has been raised with him by Councillor Lewin before. So I take Councillor Udall's point about how we make sure that these things are reflected in government, but we've spoken to Tom Collins about it. He's not raised it. Those provisions are still there. He's not told us what he thinks about it or whether he's called for any amendments. So I think the original motion, as written, is really important to make sure that our views are being reflected to the relevant departments and ministers. Worcester residents are passionate about their green spaces, their natural world and their biodiversity, and this council has done a great work to prove that. So please do support the motion as originally written and side with Worcester's natural world rather than developers. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Denham next.
Thank you very much. I have kind of problems with the original motion, calling for the withdrawal of Part 3 of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. This is a bill that is in committee stage, so it is open to amendment. It is under discussion within, and the government is trying to do its best to rectify the problematic laws that have been inherited, which have skewed and not protected nature sufficiently, potentially. Within that section of the bill, it actually gives local authorities greater powers for environmental enforcement and to bring enforcement against developers. I don't think we want to lose that. It also is the section, I understand, that gives local authorities the ability to increase our fees for planning applications, so actually we can recover the costs of providing that service and of having the necessary expertise. At present, it's that service is working at a loss. The fees that we're allowed to charge don't cover it. It's don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I'm afraid I do take objection to the painting of the present government as somehow being anti-nature and intending to, concrete over the whole of the country. We've actually put very significant investment. There's investment of 500 billion over 2 years into sustainable food production and nature recovery. That's far more investment than we've previously had. Banned the use of bee-killing pesticides and published the first pesticides national action plan in a decade that will protect our vital pollinators. We're planting 3 national forests. Then setting up the Nature Restoration Fund enables house builders and infrastructure providers to meet their environmental obligations faster and a greater scale, delivering better outcomes for nature. It doesn't mean cutting down trees that are subject to a tree protection order. I think the depiction of centralising and removing local control is not fair. We've had the biggest tree planting rate at the highest level for the last 20 years, and there's a new tree planting task force. This government, I believe, is serious about nature restoration, and I would urge people to support the motion and not vote with the original, which would throw out the good parts or seek to throw out the good parts of this bill.
Hey, Councillor Pingree.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to speak a little bit about this idea of the Nature Restoration Fund. And while I think it's a good idea generally, I think we should all be a little bit wary of it, because surely the best way that you can restore nature is by not having destroyed it in the first place. And if we have more, we're very good as City Council at making planning decisions. We've proved that we are. If we have control over our planning decisions and we can ensure that we're getting more biodiversity, then we won't have to worry about how we can then gain biodiversity later. I say this because recently I've been at the Place and Economic Development Committee, and we've been talking about play spaces for children, especially on the other side of the river, looking at Lower Wick and Bedwardine, in that we're having real trouble actually finding a space for children to play, because over time we've slowly built on our green spaces more and more and more, and now we don't have any green spaces, so there isn't anywhere for the children to play. And so what we then have to do is try and find another green space. And if we hadn't built on the green space to start with, we wouldn't have this issue. So that's why I'd be very cautious about this Nature Restoration Fund, because there's no good planting a whole load of trees somewhere else. Where we need them is right here. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. And Councillor Cross.
Thank you very much. I get that there's some particular embarrassing words in this, in the original motion. particularly for members who are of the same political grouping as the current government. It's a little bit like when your doctor says to you, you need to do this. So we've got experts who have spoken up, who are absolutely involved in whatever sector that they're passionately working within, whether it's the Wildlife Trust, whether it's the RSPB. But we've also got the OEP, the Office for Environmental Protection, saying that there's a big problem here. So if we ignore or we sort of water this down, we're ignoring the warnings of subject area experts that we really ought to listen to. And, you know, I'm not massively into identity politics, but planning absolutely has to be right. And if once you've lost it, habitat and biodiversity, it's really hard to get it back. So, you know, are we talking about let's rush to apply a sledgehammer to crack a nut? Perhaps it's the wrong sledgehammer. We've got the problem that shortage of houses, but you know, what are we doing as a government, as a country, about actually getting the consented houses built? That's our quickest win. That's our lowest hanging fruit to meet the need that is absolutely there. And if we're looking in the wrong direction and removing protections for green space, which let's just wind back to how essential green spaces were during COVID and lockdown, and how well acknowledged they are as being valuable for the well-being of communities, especially people with lesser resources and lower income. You know, do we look at WHO in Bonn 2017 talking about how bang per buck urban connected green spaces, access to green space, is the best investment you can make for socioeconomic deprived people. So let's not erode what we have left in terms of spaces. You know, there are many other places that don't have, you know, that are under risk at the moment with the revised NPPF, the housing calculation. Okay, we need houses, grant that. But if we're talking about centralising licensing and planning and taking all these local decisions away from people, how can we argue that our local government or our government is people focused and has a and is place focused as well, or centred on place? Because it's making everything more remote. Look at how we are with local government reform. Everything is top down, saying this is how it's going to be. We've just been told that the new unitary authorities must be cabinet system. Never mind places where committee system is established and is working well. Committee system leads to collegiate working. I think we need to work together on this. Let's put identities, flags, whatever it is, to one side. Let's focus on the issue of there are problems with what is currently happening with the bill. There are issues with it. Attempts have been made to try to amend the bill in Parliament, but these have been downplayed and ignored. You know, so the government's ignored warnings from watchdogs and civil society groups. So the OEP flagging potentially illegality. Past amendments voted by peers and opposition MPs, like stronger environmental tests, have been voted down or sidelined. So to say it can be improved might be a bit of wishful thinking if the government is not willing to make meaningful changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I haven't got any more. Oh, Councillor, is this on the amended motion? Because I know you were going to speak on the substantive motion.
Apologies, Mayor. Yes, substantive motion.
Okay. So what we'll do now is there's no more speakers on the amendment. So what I'll ask is for Councillor Udall if he would like to say some words summing up his amendment, and then we'll move to the vote. Oh, hang on a second. Councillor Rudge, do you want to speak on the amendment?
Mr. Mayor, so if you'll forgive me, I'm just slow to catch on. I couldn't help putting my English teacher's hat on. So this is to do with the amendment. What bothers me with the amendment is this, if you'll forgive me, Mayor, the Council requires the Managing Director to write to Tom Collins, asking him to consider supporting any amendments, is very, very vague and very, very loose, to my mind. I think that's not strong enough. consider supporting any amendments. It sounds a little bit too, well, he might not. Any amendments, well, we need to be specific about which amendments we're talking about if we want to let, it's only fair to Tom Collins to let him know what amendments we're talking about. And to me, this seems very vague, which would better reflect the concerns of the City Council, but we haven't had time to discuss what that is. So we don't know what we're asking Tom Collins to do based on this amendment. And I think it would be unfair to him to try and do that.
Thank you very much. So that's the last speaker on the amendment. So I'll ask Councillor Udall just to sum up his amendment before we move to the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To address the last point, I think it's fair to say that our Member of Parliament is not a delegate, he's a representative, and there's a significant difference. We have to give him the ability of the judgment to make his own decisions. We can't force him to do anything. Bluntly, when I've listened to the argument and the debate which we've had across the chamber, we agree with you. The bill is flawed. There needs to be change. But get this, this is where the difference is. It's either you're a party of protest or a party of government. Changes in legislation are required, and the current legislation before Parliament needs to be amended, not scrapped. It's a question of how serious you are, whether you want change or whether you just want to wave a flag of protest. What we have to consider is how we respond to government when we want to make these comments, and it's always advisable, it's always better when seeking concern about a planning application as well, to say, yes, but, rather than no, because. And that's what we're simply saying to government. We're asking them to make the changes, meet the challenges, and let's do it together rather than with confrontation, which is what you are seeking. We are a party of government, you're a party of protest.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Udall. So we'll now have a vote on the amendment. So this is just on the amendment for the time being. So all those in favour of the amendment? All those against the amendment? Okay, and abstentions? That's one. So the amendment is defeated? Yes. Okay, so the amendment is defeated. So now we go back to the substantive motion. I did have Councillor Rudge from previously, so do you still want to speak on the substantive motion, Councillor?
Yes, please, Mayor, I do. I had the privilege last Friday of going to listen to a doctor, somebody, Sarah, I can't remember his name, from the university, talking about the issue of SWIFTs and the rapidly declining numbers of SWIFTs in this country. And I think my figures are right, which is something like about 60% since the 1990s. Which is a shocking number. Even Councillor Scott would agree with me that that is an incredibly quick decline in numbers of swifts. And I only talk about this one species because I'm using it to illustrate the point. And the point is, as far as I can tell, that listening to the doctor, she was saying that there are two main issues. One is food. There's not enough food for the swifts. And one is habitation. We don't have enough nests being in house structures. But what was interesting was that this problem doesn't exist in Holland, in Europe, for example, but it is much more severe in this country. And the point I want to make, Mayor, is that we have a really, really serious problem of biodiversity in this country. And it isn't necessarily reflected across Europe. We're doing something wrong, and the situation here is extremely severe, and that's just one species. But I'm using that to illustrate the point of how significant it is and how bad it's getting and how quickly it's getting worse, so that we need a policy. And I bow to colleagues on the opposite side of the House who know more about the legislation than I do. But we do have a problem, I think, in not putting this sort of front and centre. This is a sort of tag on, it seems to me. We're doing all these things and then we're going to try and mitigate, is the word that people keep using, the problems. I don't want to mitigate the problems. I want to reverse the problems so that we're starting proactively to do something to make it better. And like I say, it's just one example of swifts, but we've got to do something, because it's not that they're being shot in Morocco It's not that they're not finding places in the Democratic Republic of Congo to live, you know, when they're not in this country. It's what's happening here. We're doing something seriously wrong, and that's just one species. And I think we need to be far more proactive in our legislation to try and counter that if we can. Thank you.
Thank you. But just before I go to Councillor Cookson, there seems to be some dispute about the numbers. Can we sort that out? Right, okay, there seems to be an appeal. So can we go back to the amendment, okay, and can we put our hands up straight? So all those in favour of the amendment?
I guess it's 16, so I do apologise. I couldn't see Councillor Smith at the end, she's behind. So it's 16.
And just to check, those against the motion? I assume it's 16.
It's 16, yes.
And those, oh, this is very exciting.
Count the 16. 15. Sorry, I can't see that. With one abstention. Yeah, 16, which is correct with 2 apologies tonight and 1 abstention. So you have the deciding.
Which way will Emperor Lamb's thumb go on this one? I am going to have to vote in favour of the amendment. So we're now debating the amended, which is now the substantive motion, as amended by the vote that's just taken place. So, Councillor Cookson, do you still want to speak on this one now?
Oh, I wasn't going to, now I've started. I've just scrapped my thing. I was just going to say something about, as Councillor Cross said, I think protecting the environment is far more important than party politics. And therefore, I do think this is a really important issue, and I'm very, very strongly in support of the principles that underline this motion. So I'm happy to support the amendment. I would have supported the full motion if it came to it, because I think this is a really important motion. And I think I'm in very good company within the Labour Party in that there are at least 24 Labour MPs who are on record of actually arguing the need for amendment. And I was just going to, as an illustration, give a quote for one of them, the Labour MP for North East Hertfordshire, who said, Section 3 lets developers pay to trash nature. This isn't reform, it's a rollback of protections we can't afford to lose. It must be amended to safeguard our most sensitive sites.
Amended.
Thank you very much.
From my perspective, the amended bill, the amendment is still accepting that we recognise that there is a need for some changes, and that's what we're asking Tom Collins to look at.
Yep.
Now, if Councillor Holmes, then Councillor Jagger, is that correct? So, Councillor Holmes.
Can I amend the amendment? Given that appears to be a considered within this chamber that we want to do something about it, can we refer this back to Environment Committee, where at the Environment Committee we can come up with exactly what we want to say as a council? Just a consideration.
Apparently, the legal advice is you can amend the amendment. We'd need a seconder for that. Is that Councillor Jagger? Do you wish to speak on the what? Can you just repeat your proposed amendment to the amendment?
To as we as a council appear to agree with the principle but not the exact words and the gesture that we wish to make, that we refer it back to the Environment Committee, where we can consider it properly and then put it forward.
Yeah, Sian's made the point that we don't know how long this piece of legislation has been debated in Parliament. So by the time it's gone to a committee and come back, it could very well have gone through the House of Commons and through the Lords and come out the other side. So I suppose the advice is not clearly we can debate this if we wish, but there's just the idea that if we want a sort of bit more immediacy about it, perhaps the original amendment. Clearly, you've proposed. Do you still want to go ahead with it, Councillor Holmes?
Could we suggest it goes to the chair and vice chair for consideration?
How many amendments is that? I'll agree with that.
Okay. The legal advice again is that the chair and vice chair don't have that delegated authority. It would have to go before. It would have to go to the committee or remain with the original amended motion. So, do you want to go with your amendment? Right, okay, sorry folks, have we got a decision?
Yeah.
So, sorry folks, can we, yeah. It's not. I've been advised that's not the. That's sorry. Sorry, Richard. I've been advised that that's not the function of P&R.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I do think they're slipping a bit off on the opposition benches across there. I think they probably need time for thought. So it may be worthwhile giving them 5 minutes to go away into a small room and huddle together and come out with an amendment. And that will give us time to have a natural break as well.
Would you like a short? 10-minute recess. Yeah. So we're going to have a. I make it 53. So 3 minutes past 9. 10 minutes. No later than that, please, folks. Thank you. Right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. Thank you for coming back. Just before we move on, just a point of etiquette has been raised with me by a member. Can we be careful when I realise, you know, when amendments are going back and forth, there's always groups are discussing things between themselves to sort of come to a common position. But can we bear in mind that, you know, other members want to hear the speakers, and sometimes when there is chatter, you know, speakers do find, you know, some of the councillors do find it hard to hear what is being said. So can we just bear that in mind and try and keep chatter to its lowest level, please, because that's getting in the way of the debate and the discussion. Okay, so I understand that since over the break, there's been a kind of bit of discussion, and I understand that there is an amendment that Councillor Lewin, as the mover of the original motion, wishes to put forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd like to propose an amendment. It is going to be that therefore Council requires the Managing Director to write to Tom Collins MP asking him to delete, consider, support any amendments to Part 3 of the Planning and Infrastructure Bill which would better reflect the concerns of the City Council and the Worcestershire Wildlife Trust, and vote against the bill if it stays in its current form. Thank you.
I'll accept that amendment.
Hang on, we got someone formally seconding that. Yep, Councillor Denham.
I'm prepared to formally second. I think we are united in wanting legislation to fully reflect the importance of nature in our city, and we want our legislation to be of the highest standard to deliver what we want. There is scope for some amendment within this, and I think, you know, to give our MP, to support our MP in doing so, I'm happy with that.
Do we have any speakers on the amendment? No, I'm not seeing any. Okay, Councillor Kimberley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I just ask to have the wording of the new amendment repeated, please? Because I think I didn't catch the last part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so it is in the phrase asking him to consider supporting, it will be taking out the word consider and it will say support. And then at the end, there is an and, which is voting against the bill if it stays in its current form. So basically, we want to give our support to our MP to make amendments for the city and, you know, have a voice behind him if he wants to, you know, stand up and speak against certain aspects of it. Thank you.
I think we've got Councillor Gregson.
I think it's a point of order, Mayor, but I didn't hear Councillor Lewin say that last bit when she read out the amendment. Did she? Well,
I've been advised that she did.
It's my fault if I've fallen asleep. I'm so sorry.
Right, okay. Are there any other speakers on the amendment? On the amendment, I'm not seeing any. Therefore, we will have a vote on the amendment. Okay, so all those in favour of the amendment. Any again? I think that's unanimous. Yep. Are you against, Alan?
Against.
And any abstentions? So the amendment is carried and becomes now the substantial motion. So do we have any final speakers on the substantial motion as it is now formed? Therefore, we give Karen, as Councillor Lewin, as the proposer of the original motion, the opportunity to sum up, if she wishes.
Look, I'm pleased we've managed to come to a consensus that this bill needs more work. And obviously, we've all said lots of things about how nature is important. I'm sure our residents will be really pleased that we are listening to them. And you know, we're sending a strong message to our MP. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So finally, we have the vote. We move to the vote of the substantial motion. All those in favour? All those against? And any abstentions? No, therefore the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Motion three, which is the local impact on the government's pathways to work green paper, that motion has been withdrawn. Okay, that's been withdrawn. So we now move to motion 4, improving mobile connectivity and generating income through small cell deployment in Worcester city centre. And this motion is proposed by Councillor Jagger.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm afraid that there's been some discussion behind the scenes, and so I'm proposing some amendments to the motion just to make it more straightforward. I wonder, explain the motion first and then propose the amendments? Yes? In my efforts to make the motion professional and well-researched, I managed to make a very simple project appear very complicated and very scary. So I am going to go off script to just explain it, and if I switch into my, A-level teacher mode, please forgive me in my efforts to just make it very simple. This is a low-cost, low-risk, low-cost, high-impact project, and it seems very complicated, but it's actually not. Basically, the county council created a survey. And in that survey, they put some sensors behind lorries and then looked at the signal around the city. They discovered that our signal is actually worse than we first believed. And they were able to identify different postcodes that have really bad signal. That they created a digital strategy, which is actually very impressive and it's ambitious, but it doesn't go into too much detail in the areas that we come to. So when you look at postcode data, it's a very large data, and it doesn't give you all the information that you need. So for example, it won't tell you whether you get better signal one side of the Guildhall, the other side of the Guildhall next to the Hive. That level of micro detail, it's beyond their scope. So this project is actually very straightforward, because all that we require to do is for somebody to download an app on their phone, walk around certain areas of the city center, look at how the signal is, and identify 1 or 2 black spots where you don't get any signal. That is too much to us, a very large council to do, because it's just a sort of micro level. And then if they realize that their signal is really bad, perhaps in front of the Guildhall or next to the Hive or somewhere else, just to stick a little device, which is the size of a shoebox, in a building. Now, the advantage of that is that we wouldn't have to pay for it. We wouldn't have to pay to maintain it. There is companies that will install it for us, maintain it for us, and they will pay us a little bit of an income for it. We're talking about between £3,000 and £1,000 that the council could get a year. It's not a lot of money, but this has been trialed in other councils in London, where they looked at this is a really bad area and they can install it. So it shouldn't be a very onerous project. It's literally looking around, okay, there are 3 assets, maybe 3 locations in the city center, maybe the Guildhall, maybe the Scala, maybe one of our multi-story car parks, and putting a little box there to improve the signal. And literally that is all that this motion is seeking to do. So now that I've explained the sort of scope of the project, I'd like to propose sort of a little change on the wording. So I've removed points 1 to 5, which made it very onerous, and replaced them with 3 points. So the motion would read, Council therefore resolves to refer this issue to the policy, sorry, I should say place, not policy, my apologies, Place and Economic Development Committee, and 1, identify 2 or 3 locations in the city center where poor connectivity causes a great deal of harm to businesses, residents, and visitors, and identify a council asset or assets that could host a small cell booster to address this issue. 2, explore the possibility of gaining a rental income agreement by looking at councils that get between £3,000 and £1,000 for similar projects. And 3, ensure connectivity improvements are embedded across all relevant council activities. I've sent the wording to Julian so that he has the exact words. But that last point, all it means is if we're building something and we know there is back signal, consider putting a booster in there just so that we can have better signal.
Just before we move on, is there a hard copy of this? Because
I don't have a hard copy, no. I can read them slowly if that helps.
Would council prefer it if Julian can print some copies off so they can have a sight of the words? Yeah, okay, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, folks. Okay, and we're back. We're back. Just a further comment from me as mayor. As a teacher, I've been there at 5 minutes before I'm due to teach a lesson, desperately photocopying stuff and sweating. But it would be useful, you know, when we are proposing these amendments, which are quite detailed, to try and prepare it in advance. So I know, yes, Councillor Udall, I know you did, and you go to the top of the class for doing so. Okay. So we now have the words of the amendment for the motion from Councillor Jagger. Is that? Do you want to? Have you finished your points about? Do you want to speak to the difference of the amendment you've made?
No, I'm just want to emphasize that this is, I know that technology sounds really complicated, but it's actually a very simple project that we could be making money off. So whatever version of the motion we pass, I don't want it to get lost into the detail.
I've been advised that, as we know, we have people who watch this at home and they're not obviously party to this. So do you mind just, for the people at home watching this, we know there are some out there, can there's nothing else on telly, can you just read out the words of the motion? Is that all right?
So, Council therefore resolves to refer this issue to the Place and Economic Development Committee to identify 2 or 3 locations in the city centre where poor connectivity causes the greatest harm to businesses, residents, and visitors, and identify a council asset or assets that could host a small cell booster to address those issues. 2, explore the possibility of gaining a rental income agreement by looking at councils that get between £3,000 and £1,000 from similar projects. And 3, ensure digital connectivity improvements are embedded across all relevant council activities in collaboration with BID and the County Council.
Thank you very much. And I think this is being seconded by Councillor Alcott.
Mayor, thank you. I second and reserve the right to speak.
So those who wish to speak on the motion, and I've got Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we've all been in the Crowgate bus station and had issues with unreliable Worcestershire buses. It's really important that people can plan their routes and have those connectivity conversations through text or calling or whatever. My only question with this is who is going to be identifying these locations and how much officer time do they expect it to take? Thank you.
Councillor Gregson.
Thanks, Mayor. I've been banging on about this issue for years and years, and actually got some support from ex-councillor Chris Mitchell on the matter, and still seem to have to go through a laborious process to get anything done. And that's not necessarily down to council officers, but I expect it's down to a variety of issues, including providers who are amenable to doing this kind of work. But I would fully support referring this to the committee so that those sorts of little questions and issues can be developed through a committee and we can get some progress in order to make things a lot easier and more 21st century technological for our residents and our visitors.
Thank you, and I've Councillor Desira.
I don't know if that's my thing, that's me. Thank you, Mayor. So the first, I've got 2 points. I think in principle it's a good idea, but I think it would be better if it works, if we have a trial, we make it a rolling programme and try and pick up all the poor connectivity hotspots. The only other thing I would say is the final point just seems to be extremely broad. I mean, it's just too broad. Connectivity improvements, vague. I'm not sure that if we have a rolling programme to improve connectivity and the internet access, that probably wraps it up. That's all I would say.
Okay, and we've got Councillor Denham.
Thank you very much. I'm fully supportive, and I would like to hope that we all are. And as Councillor Gregson has said, you know, improving mobile coverage in the city centre is really important, and absolutely understand how important that is for local businesses, local workers, visitors, residents. My difficulty with the motion and even with the amendment is the nature of how proscriptive it is in the way that it's written. I don't think we as lay councillors, some of us may have done a bit of Googling, others not, because we haven't had the capacity. I'm loath to sign up to a particular methodology of solving the problem at full council. Absolutely agree to referring some investigation to place an economic development committee. I do think we absolutely need to be mindful that it's a government requirement and the county council, and we need to be really careful, as we say a number of times actually, about what this council gets involved in, which is a discretionary activity and which is somebody else's responsibility. So I think a light touch discussion or review at PED is the way that we should be approaching this.
Okay, Councillor Lewin.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment. Having listened to people, I do think that a problem sometimes with motions that they are too prescriptive, and actually, you know, this is such an important project. Bearing in mind, the funding for local government at the moment, how stretched our officers are. I would really advocate working with others like Worcester Bid. So my proposal will be that this issue is referred to place an economic development, and to basically select the first line, the council believes that, and it will be to improve mobile coverage, and basically leave it for PED to sort out the best way to do it. Thank you.
Do you just want to say that exactly what your proposed amendment is?
Yes, so the amendment is the council therefore resolves to refer this issue to the Place and Economic Development Committee with a project to improve, to look into a project to improve mobile coverage in the city centre, as it is essential to business, visitors, residents and Worcester's reputation as a connected modern city.
Okay, and have we got a seconder for that amendment? Yeah, Councillor Mace.
I formally second it and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Okay, so we're now discussing the amendment. Are we all okay with what the amendment is actually saying? Yeah, okay. Have we got anyone who wants to speak on the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to support an amendment that gives a bit more flexibility in this. The topic is really important, the modality of how we achieve this work without incurring huge cost. Absolutely aware of the huge financial and resource constraints that we have. Our county council have a website and mobile coverage checker and all sorts of information there, and a work plan on this. And I think we need to be working with county on this and using what resources are already there, rather than trying to reinvent a wheel. But the topic is really important. Happy to support that. Thank you.
Councillor Jagger.
I'm listening to everybody's, thank you for your comments. My issue with the amendment is that it leaves it too generic. And we are already working on this. The county council is working on this. We've heard that this has been an issue we've been working on for a very long time. I would be prepared to accept the amendment on the condition that it specifically mentions small cell, that somebody looking into small cell boosters and to the case studies that I've attached to the motion. I'm not asking that the council agree to use them. I'm not asking that the council put money aside for it. Just look into that very specific thing and consider it, because that will make a big difference at a very small scale, which the county council and the unitary authority will not be looking at because they will have bigger fish to fry. It's just if you include a specific instruction to look into this particular technology and the case studies, I will be prepared to accept the amendment.
I've been advised that we should vote on Karen's amendment as was set out a few minutes ago. Is there anyone else who wants to speak on Karen's amendment? Councillor Kimberley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, and sort of in terms of process, to try and sort of make it flow. If we approved, if we voted in favour of this amendment, Councillor Jagger presumably would be able to come to PED committee to speak as an attending councillor and push this, bring the idea there. That might be the speediest and most expedient way to conduct this, so that we're not here in an hour.
I think you've already spoken, Councillor Jagger. Yeah. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Gregson indicated, this has been a long time coming as an idea, and it's time we did deal with it, though I think it is a good idea to deal with it via the committee system. And I can tell you that there are a number of businesses around the city that would be delighted to hear that something is happening on this. I can still remember, and I'm going to name check it for the moment, I used to go to the Centenary Lounge a lot for coffee, sometimes breakfast, and you would see the staff there jumping around, waving their mobile phones in the air in an attempt to get their mobiles to connect with their sum-up machines. You know, it would be really helpful to a lot of businesses that are in these black spots to be able not to do that, just to get a direct connection.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mace.
So I realise now from we should declare an interest as I work for a company that sells hospitality software, including things that work hopefully better than some machines. So I should declare the interest.
Councillor Rudge.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just check? This is a very innocent question. I don't know the answer, obviously. Look into a project to improve. Are we saying currently we don't have a project to improve, or we do, but it's not very good?
Yes.
Seeking advice to Councillor Udall. Come on. Just seeking advice to answer Councillor Rudge's. Apparently it's not at the moment on the committee programme. Abstentions? Okay, so the amendment is carried. The amendment is carried and therefore forms the substantive motion. Now, on the substantive motion, I've got Councillor Agar, Councillor Cross and Councillor Barnes, who wanted to speak on the original motion. Do you still wish to speak, Councillor? Councillor Cross? Councillor Barnes? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, it does seem that we've got a shared vision on this. And maybe we could start with a trial. We've got a big Scala building just by a big black spot. So I think possibly we could use that as a trial site if possible, because certainly Crangate Bus Station and Angel Place are a black spot. And if we've got a building which we have, which has got scaffolding up so we can put it up easily enough, maybe that could be our trial.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other indications. Therefore, I would ask Councillor Jagger just to sort of sum up. I think you were the proposer, Councillor Jagger. So do you want to just sum up the motion before we take a vote? I beg your pardon, Karen.
Yes, it was the amended motion.
We're talking about the substantive motion now. Oh, as amended. Sure. The original motion is Councillor Jagger. This one?
Yeah, so Councillor Jagger gets the final word.
Yeah. Because the motion has been amended and now forms the substantive motion. The person who proposed the substantive motion was Councillor Jagger. That's what I thought. Yeah.
I will do everybody a favor and keep it short. I'm going to hold you to account to make sure that we actually do this. I don't want it to see it lost, and I will keep going on and on about it until I can't speak anymore. So please, please don't let it fall through the cracks. And I will trust that if it goes to PED, you will actually look into this very specific thing that I've suggested. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we now move to the vote. All those in favour of the motion as amended? All those against? And any abstentions? So that looks unanimous to me. Yep, so the motion is passed. The motion is passed. Okay, thank you. So those are the motions. We now move to item 8, these where the Council will now consider reports on matters which by law or in accordance with the Constitution are referred to Council for decision. And we have a referral report from the Place and Economic Development Committee of the 23rd of June 2025 on the air quality supplementary planning document. And this is proposed by Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I will try to be brief on such an important issue. I stand before you to discuss a matter that affects each and every one of us living in Worcester City. Air quality is not just an environmental concern, it's a matter of public health, quality of life and the legacy we leave for future generations. Worcester City is known for its rich history and vibrant community. However, we face growing challenges with air pollution that threatens our health and environment. Poor air quality can lead to serious health conditions, including asthma, heart disease, and even premature death. We cannot stand by idly and watch our air quality deteriorate. We must take action now. Worcester has proposed the Air Quality Supplementary Planning Document, or SPD, which aims to address this urgent issue. By adopting this SPD, we can create a framework that prioritises clean air and sustainable living. This document is not just a set of guidelines, it's a commitment to improving health of our community and safeguarding the environment. Imagine a city where our children can play in parks without the worry of harmful pollutants. Picture streets filled with cleaner air, where walking and cycling become safe and enjoyable modes of transport. By supporting the Air Quality SPD, we are choosing a healthier future for ourselves, our families and our neighbours. I urge you to support this initiative. Let's come together as a community and advocate for a cleaner, healthier Worcester City. Let us ensure that we act decisively today so that we can breathe easier tomorrow. Together we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I understand this is going to be seconded by Councillor Kimberley.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to say too much to add to what Councillor Cooper has said, except I think that this is an excellent report and it really clears the air after a long meeting.
Well, Bob, do we have any speakers on the report? Councillor Denham.
I would just really welcome this coming to council. As a member who sat on an air quality working group many moons ago that made recommendations but minimal progress. This is absolutely positive progress that really is looking to address air quality in the city. We've been held up over the years due to prior legislation lack of clarity of legislation, and a county council that was unwilling to play their part. I'm really, really pleased to see that this is progress that this council can deliver with colleagues in South Worcestershire to form part of the South Worcestershire Development Plan for the benefit of health and well-being of our residents.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Cross?
Yep, thank you very much. I echo those words. This is really essential work. Air quality is a fundamental human right, and it affects disadvantaged people disproportionately more. They're not able to move to better areas with better air quality. So, yeah, absolutely fantastic work. Really, this is another example of where Worcester City is leading the way and doing things that are not being done in other districts and further across our county. And local government reorganisation, I really hope that such progress as this is kept. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Desira?
Thank you, Mayor. I think I heard Councillor Denham say that this is well, it's in the meeting anyway, it's a collaboration between South Worcestershire councils already. I think it bodes very well for a South Worcestershire, North-South unitary in the future if this is the sort of thing it can produce.
Thank you. And Councillor Agar?
Thank you. I think the report is extremely valuable and comprehensive, so I'm not really going to talk about the report itself. A couple of things around it, really. One is that about 12 years back, I think it was, Oxford University did an epidemiological study, pretty much proving the correlation between poor air quality and certain kinds of lung disease, poor health, asthma, such things as that. They were quite clear about the correlation. Since then, a lot of medical research has gone on, which has actually investigated that link. And I think that we're sure about that. We know that things like nitrous oxides can pass through the blood-brain barrier. It affects your brain, it affects your blood, it affects your whole body. And we do know that the number of people dying from lung-related diseases and conditions each year is enormous. And the cost to the NHS and to the people living with that is huge. And we need to stop it. And the only other thing I would add was I had a conversation some time back with Lord Rook, who is an engineer, and he told me that you can actually convert buses to hydrogen quite easily. So whether we go for electric or whether we go for hydrogen, it's a simple matter. We do have to put some money in, however. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mace?
Thank you. I do thank Councillor Agar for teeing me up there, because I was actually just going to talk about hydrogen. Now, page 19 of the Agenda Pack 1.5 mentions about most air pollution is caused by the combustion of fossil fuels for the purpose of transportation, heating, and electricity generation. And page 20, 1.8, mentions nitrogen dioxide and oxides of nitrogen emitted from combustion of fossil fuels used to power road vehicles and domestic and industrial heating. Now, as it says in the next sentence, NO2 is a gas associated with various types of combustion, and that includes burning hydrogen, unfortunately. And because hydrogen burns at a higher temperature than methane, you actually get more nitrogen oxide being produced from burning hydrogen. So the best power for air quality is actually using just straight electrical power rather than burning hydrogen. So that's something to bear in mind for the future.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers? I don't see anyone. So what we've got to do is to vote to adopt the air quality supplementary planning document as amended and set out in the appendix. So all those in favour? And any against? No. And any abstentions? No. So that report is adopted by the council. Thank you. Item number 9 is the report of the Members' Champion for Children and Young People. And you've got a copy of it in your pack, so I'd like to invite Councillor Collier to present the report.
Thank you very much.
I'm bringing tonight the report of Children and Young People's Champion. Please take as read, so I don't need to use our time here going over something that you've either already digested or will do shortly. However, please allow me to elaborate just for a short time, and I promise I'll try and be super brief, around advocacy for children and young people and some of my observations and learnings over the last 12 months. The difficulties faced by young people in this country should be a source of national shame. So we have a continuing downtrend in well-being, which is reported by young people themselves and widely reported and acknowledged. So this includes mental health struggles, concerns about physical health, fitness levels, bone strength, an increase in short-sightedness. We have children's independent mobility, which is dramatically reduced in a generation. So our children don't walk as far than us or their parents. We have reduced the amount of time children spend outside. Children now spend 50% less time outside than a generation ago. In addition to this, we have playgrounds and play spaces that have been chronically underfunded, youth clubs that have reduced. Crucially, there are many fewer youth and play workers than 20 years ago. On a different note, our roads and our streets are busier than ever. There are more cars, there are bigger cars, and they've taken the spaces that historically people would have taken on the streets. We then have schooling, which has become increasingly structured. Playtimes have been shortened over the last 30 years. There's a national crisis in SEND provision. And finally, for my list of misery, we've embraced leaps in technology, but without protecting our young people online. And so I do appreciate that, frankly, that sounds incredibly miserable, and it is a little bit, but it's because I'm asking us as leaders in our communities that one of our roles is to ensure that the needs and the voice of our young people are heard. And it's easy to make assumptions about their needs and their wants and their beliefs. When I talk about play, I'm actually talking about the rights of the child and the right to be seen, the right to be heard, the right to take up space and to participate as a member of their community. So remembering that play is the work of childhood. I will bring it back to the direct work of this council now. So back to my report. It was an absolute honour to spend the last 12 months in the role. And I'm just going to share 3 particular points. First of all, it's been an absolute privilege to have the chance to see some of the incredible work that goes on across the city with children and young people. My own highlights have been at Purdeswell Young People's Leisure Club and some of their incredible provision, the provision with some of the youth clubs at Worcester Community Trust, and seeing the work of their youth workers, and events hosted by Lightbox. So those events combating some of that list of background that we've created for our children and young people. My second point is to recognise the incredible hard work of City Council officers. I am just going to highlight Anne Nichols and Alan New and how they push forward and really champion the rights of children and young people and listen to them. And my third point is just the impressive work and commitment of this council officers and members to the play plan and how that's moved forward. Moving forward in this role myself, I've got many more plans that focus largely on how we develop youth voice and representation under a broader theme of how we make Worcester a child-friendly city. So please read the reports, and I would very much welcome all and any conversations about it after this meeting maybe, at any time about any of the topics in there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And questions? I have Councillor Mace first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Katie, for this report. The breadth of activity you've undertaken in the past year is amazing, and you are a credit to this council for your relentless advocacy for children and young people across the city. I do also want to pay a particular tribute to Alan New as well for his work on the Worcester Play Plan, alongside all the other officers who have contributed to play in our city. I know from my own experience that it can be a big drain on mental energy to be an advocate for play. I had a resident in my ward who wanted to set up a play street on a Saturday afternoon in August. Their street was a quiet back street, and I had objections that, to be honest, absolutely defied belief, so including somebody telling me that groups of children together can cause hearing damage. and grown adults were threatening to protest children playing in their street. I can safely say that I had more correspondence over that proposal than anything else in my time as a councillor. And I think it shows that the absolute challenge that we have standing up for children, because they don't vote for us, but they are absolutely a key part of our city. And I've had people say to me about the pump track in Purgeville, who's asking for this? And children don't tend to contact their local councillor. So we have to stand up for them, but also make sure that they are part of the conversation, so that when we can say who's asking for this, we can point and say children are asking for this, and that's why we're spending the money on it. We are absolutely elected to represent everyone in our wards, including the children. So I want to thank Katie again and everyone else who advocates for children on this council for their hard work in the face of often unreasonable resistance. If we truly want to solve antisocial behaviour, we must make sure that children and young people are welcome throughout our city. And to prove I have read the report, I think Play Worcester is misspelt at one point, where the R is missing from Worcester. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you very much. And Councillor De Sira?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you for the report and all the work you've done on this. I know you are a very strong advocate for children, which is fantastic. It's our future, as the song says. I would like to ask you, will you be able to find time next year in your plan to do something in support of coding clubs? So coding clubs have been going on as a trial in my ward, and they also run from the Hive. I think they're absolutely brilliant. They're for primary school children. So anybody who knows how to play a game on their phone can actually learn to write one. And I think this is like a really good incentive for the future. Potentially people can get to work in the industry if they wish when they have an early introduction to it. So I just really wanted to make you aware of that if you hadn't been, and maybe come along and see some.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, brilliant. I absolutely will. I had heard of your incredible work trying to push forward for co-clubs, and so it would be an honour. At a previous version of me, I was a code club leader in the primary school I worked at. So not that I'm volunteering to run anything.
Cooper?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Collier for not only representing us nationally, but also internationally. That's a fantastic achievement. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gregson?
Thanks. I mean, I don't have any issues or argument with the report or what Councillor Collier has had to say. But I mean, there's a couple of issues that she referred to that strike a bit of a chord with me in my ward. One about the number of cars and the size of cars, and the other about a lack of physical opportunity for young people and children in particular. And that one of the things that I get most complaints about is parking outside primary schools. And I know that there are bike buses, and I know there are some walking buses, and I know these things happen in some places, but predominantly they are not in the schools which are in the more deprived areas of the city. And I really think that, you know, it would be helpful, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation with her or others about it outside this chamber, if there was something that we could do collectively to convince parents of the relative ease and approachability of being able to get to school without having to turn up in a large tractor down a narrow road. And I just think that, you know, that sort of issue widens out on our other council policies, as not purely just strictly about children.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Cochrane.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Katie, for the report, and more importantly for all the work that you've been doing over the last year. I think that you know, we can think about children and play, and as Katie said, the work of children being play as being an optional extra, but I think it's absolutely fundamental to you know, us as a council. You know, I think historically we have lagged behind some other areas, but I think that there's a renewed vigour, and the play plan and having you know, the member champion for children and young people is an absolutely vital part of that. You know, this you know, sort of new mindset, I think is absolutely key going forward as we're going into the planning and discussions about unitary authority. That, you know, it's another aspect of Worcester City that we want to hold on to and develop, and we don't want to get lost in the fog of the Worcestershire County Council's other priorities. And so I hope that you know, that will be considered through the process of consultation that's going on at the moment about how the unitary authority is created, and you know, I would support the South Worcestershire, North Worcestershire model, so that we can maintain these unique aspects of our sort of city culture.
And I've got Councillor Alcott.
Mayor, thank you. Yeah, I would just briefly like to thank Councillor Collier for all her support. Obviously last year as Mayor my theme was Youth Matters, which I will continue, and I'm a big supporter and advocate as per as well Young People's Leisure Club. So just a quick thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Agar.
Apologies, I wasn't going to speak, but it occurs to me that there are gaps in provision, and I'm sure Councillor Collier is aware that there are. A lot of these occur in low-income areas, and those children there often lead very urbanised lives. They don't have many chances in life, and so, you know, that anything we can do to fill those gaps helps. And the other thing I notice is that we've done a marvellous job on play provision, and I welcome that. It's been terrific. But slightly older children and young people, teenagers of certain ages, don't actually join in with that. It's not their sort of age group. And I think we need to look at age-specific stuff for teenagers as well, who are beyond the need to sort of play in the usual way that younger children do. So if we could look also at that, that would be great.
Thank you very much. So this item's just for noting, so no vote is required. But I'd like to pass my personal thanks to Katie. I was the Children and Young People's Champion, and it's such an important role. It really is. So I thank you for your hard work in this particular area. So item 10, report from the Leader of the Council on any matters which they are of the opinion require urgent consideration by the Council. And I understand Lynn would like to give us an update on local government reorganisation.
It's not going to happen.
I don't get too excited about the scale of the update. I mean, clearly, you know, it is an extremely important topic, and I note the kind of references actually in a number of speeches and a number of contributions of what about the unitary, what about the future. I thought it would be helpful just to give a sort of general verbal update so that people understand, and given the pace at which we're required to move, you know, to wait till the next committee, to wait to the next council. So I think, you know, it's important that we have a common understanding of what is going on and process. So to start with, first of all, thank you to all of those people that contributed to the public engagement exercise. So that closed at the end of June, and across the whole county we got kind of over 4,000 contributions. We've got the sort of headline vote, so to speak. So across the whole county, 47.8% of residents voted in favour of a 2-unitary option, preferring north and south rather than a single unitary for the county. So 28.7% of those that contributed voted for a single unitary. There will be, we haven't yet had sight of the kind of the contributions in terms of what people have said. So, you know, the richer picture or the information that the views that sit behind that, we will get it. It's just not available at this moment in time. Thank you also to all of those colleagues, council members who were able to join the call and meet with Mutual Ventures last night. So these are the consultants that have been appointed to produce an appraisal of the two options, thank you to everyone that contributed. The vote taken at the informal vote of those that were able to participate in the meeting last night was unanimously for the two unitary model. And the feedback, you know, Mutual Ventures, I think, were massively impressed about how enthusiastic we are, how much we care about Worcester and our city and its future. They said we were kind of the most active and engaged of the stakeholder groups that they've been with. They will be producing a report of this kind of options appraisal, which we will have for council meeting to consider on the 2nd of September. And that will be a vote for us to look at the detail and to agree for us to vote on our preferred option in light of the evidence and information. Mutual Ventures will then work on producing the final submission, you know, in light of votes from the district councils that are participating. And that will get the kind of final submission to council on the 25th of November, just in time for it to be submitted to government for the 28th of November. I mean, these are the original dates we were given, and at this point there's no indication that those will slip in any way. And a decision will come back in due course in 2026. We've obviously spent, I think, the majority of time talking about the two unitary model on single unitary. A lot of concern absolutely here with regard to, local identity, local contact and neighbourhood and what that means. And there were, for those that were able to go to the LGA conference, there were some sessions on parish councils. We are looking to set up a kind of briefing meeting with our local expert in order for us to get a better understanding of what parish councils can and can't do, what a town council looks like, what a city council on that model might or might not look like. I think, David and I had a meeting with this chap right at the beginning of the year. He is absolutely an expert in terms of the legislation that exists already, and I think we need a good, given that Worcester City is not only has two parish councils, we need a good understanding of what the rules are before we go down the road of kind of making any decisions or assumptions on that. Within the sort of feedback and the latest information from government, it does refer to sort of neighbourhood area committees, and I think absolutely those are worth exploring again, a better understanding. And I think the key difference is, that those are potentially multi-agency meetings with residents as well, with resident voices. So those are the things that we will be exploring kind of over the summer to get a better understanding of. What else have I got to mention? And then that's the sort of going further down to the sort of neighbourhood and the very local community identity. The other part that we do need to give consideration to is actually the shape of a strategic authority, and where would Worcester City, the new unitaries, where do we think the right point of connection is there? The county leaders group, we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with leaders of councils, kind of the sort of the ring around Birmingham, if you see what I mean, to have that conversation. It was, I think, really interesting as to the options that our neighbours are looking at, and some of the options that they might want to pursue kind of actually are not available on the table. So Warwickshire, for example, were exploring whether they could join the West Midlands Combined Authority. That is not the way forward. And I think, you know, it absolutely makes you look at the geography and understand the geography of where our neighbours are, who our neighbours are. And I think, you know, where we sit, we can see the pull of the big urban centres. We can see the pull into Birmingham, and going to the south, we can see the pull for sort of North Gloucestershire towards Bristol. But we sit between that, and, you know, we're not urban, we're different. So there are ongoing conversations, and we will, you know, be looking at bringing proposals or see if we can get some agreement towards proposals on the combined authority. So a lot to think about, and, you know, about designing the future for local government, for our residents and our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And finally, item 11, any exempt items, and there are no exempt items to consider, and therefore I close the meeting. Thank you very much for your patience, and if you wish to have some cake, there is his available in the